it's been really interesting to watch Brody return to Australia and watch that play out, because that, again, that was a fear that I know I had for quite some time. What I loved was when he returned to Australia, he went and started applying for jobs. He just wanted a normal 17-year-old life. So he went back, lived with my parents for a year, and started applying for jobs, as you do when you're 17, McDonald's or KFC or any of these. He interviewed for 5 jobs, and he said every single interview, all they wanted to know was about his world schooling experience.
We just wanna travel. We just wanna travel. We just wanna travel. We just wanna travel. We just wanna travel, learn and grow across continents and cultures to and fro. World school in our hearts, minds and souls. The need to travel from our head to our toes. We just want to see something bigger than us. We just want to travel the world. We just want to meet someone different from us. We just want to travel.
Hello, and welcome to the Our Offbeat Life podcast. This is no ordinary travel show. Here, we delve into the extraordinary lives of intrepid families who've taken the leap into full-time travel. Each week, we bring you captivating stories from globe-trotting families, sharing their triumphs, their challenges, and their incredible adventures. From practical advice on homeschooling on the road to inspiring tales of personal growth and transformation, we cover it all. Our mission is to help you, to show you that an offbeat life full of full-time travel is not just a dream, but a feasible, enriching, and exciting reality. And, more importantly, we're here to provide you with the tools, resources, and motivation to take that leap into the unknown. So buckle up, because we're about to embark on an exciting journey. Let's explore the world together, one episode at a time. Again, welcome to the Our Offbeat Life podcast. Here's your host, David Cole. Let's get started.
Welcome back to the Our Offbeat Life podcast, where we dive into the lives that break the mold. In today's captivating episode, we're going to delve into the heart of an educational revolution, spotlighting a movement that has witnessed the staggering 65% increase in families choosing home education, as reported by The Guardian. Now, this wave of personalized experiential learning is opening up a world of opportunities for kids to learn directly from their surroundings, far beyond traditional classrooms. Leading the charge in this adventurous approach to life and learning is Karen King, a worldschooling pioneer from Australia, who's been living this life along with her family for quite a while now. Despite having all the markers for success, a thriving business, a lovely home, and a stable job for her husband, they felt something crucial was missing. Life had become a cycle of work with little space for joy. Everything changed after a 7-week vacation that introduced them to the idea of location independence and world schooling. There was a light bulb moment. So by 2015, they were ready to take the plunge, selling everything they owned to travel the world full time from January of 2016. Karen is here today. She's going to share her real deal about living this dream, from the ups and downs on their journey to how they've managed to keep going through entrepreneurship and house sitting, to the profound impact that worldschooling has had on their children. So if you've ever fantasized about ditching that 9 to 5 for a life of adventure, meaningful learning, this episode is for you. So let's get inspired by Karen King's story of embracing freedom and forging an extraordinary path for her family. Hello and welcome to the show, Karen.
Hello, how are you? I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you to finally talk. You've
Right.
got an awesome story.
You know, we're just ordinary people. So, but we just wanted more out of life. we were living the Australian dream, which I imagine is much like the American dream and, all the other countries. But we just wanted more out of life. We were living what we now refer to as our Groundhog Day existence, just rinse and repeat day after day. And I felt like I was missing out on time with the kids. My husband and I would just, we were so tired from just doing it all the time. And so we took a break and discovered another way of living. So, and now 8.5 years at this point later, and we don't ever want to stop. It's been absolutely amazing.
That's really cool. That's very cool. So, what aspects of that traditional Australian life weren't fulfilling for you and your family at the time?
I think, we had all the things that society says you need to have to be successful. We had 2 kids, we had a big, beautiful house that we'd built and designed to suit our needs. We had a family business. We had all the things that should have made us happy. But what we were finding was it was just that constant activity. We had to get up early, feed the kids, get them my son to school, my daughter to daycare, go in and run the family business and get home late, un, you know, get the kids fed and into bed. And then, we're falling into bed at sort of, 8 or 9 or 10 o'clock and then just starting to have a little bit of time for ourselves and then just, rinse and repeat day after day. And for me, the turning point was when my daughter came home. It was Mother's Day, and so at kindergarten, they all made these beautiful paintings for their mums, and the teachers helped them write a little message. And what they were tasked to do was write or to paint something that my mum's favorite thing to do on the weekend, I think it was, and my daughter's response was my mum's favorite thing to do on the weekend is stay in bed and sleep. And I thought, no, that's not what I love to do. The reality was that, running our own business, working 6 days a week, by Sunday, I was so exhausted. I just didn't have any energy. And that painting, she hates me telling this story. I tell this story all the time now. But that painting was a real eye opener. It made us realize that kids grow up so quickly and that I was missing out on so much time with them. We were running this business to have a better life, but life was happening whilst we were busy doing other things. And so we at that point we didn't realize we had much other option. We were doing all the things that we were meant to be doing, and it was only that we started traveling and I read the 4 Hour Work Week and learned the phrase location independence, working online and living anywhere. And that was an absolute light bulb moment. And at that point, our lives changed forever as a result.
Wow, very cool. Yeah, that's a good gateway book for a lot of people getting into this kind of lifestyle.
Yeah.
It definitely helped us out too. So
Ironically, I'd already been doing a bit of work online, and so it felt like something I should have already understood. But of course, society teaches you that you go to school, you grow up, you get a job, you get a house, these are the activities that you do to be successful and happy. And it never occurred to me, and it was a big moment to say, hey, you know what, we're going to sell everything that we own and just leave and kind of be deliberately homeless.
yes. Oh, that's a good, yeah, deliberately homeless. I get it.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Well, let's take a few seconds to get to know you a little bit better with a little lightning round. All right. So, water, coffee, soda, or tea?
Coffee.
Cat or dog?
Oh, dog, absolutely. As long as they don't drop too much hair.
Pool or beach?
Ooh, pool. I think. Yeah, pool. I'm getting to know myself here.
Yeah. City or country?
I grew up in the country, but I love cities now. I'd have to say city.
City. Okay. Now, would you rather have unlimited free flights or a magical RV that can take you anywhere?
RV. We're at a
RV?
point where I love having my stuff. We traveled so quick for so long. I love having our stuff, even though we don't have much of it. And I've always said I love to be able to move with all of that, have our house move with us. So that would be awesome.
All right. And if you could hop into a time machine and visit any historical event or era with your family, where would you want to
Oh,
go and what would you want to experience?
oh, that's a good question. I don't think I prepared well for this one. Oh, there's so many things that we've seen over the years, so many historical moments that oh, goodness me. I can't pick one, I don't think. We've seen so many as you travel. We've been to nearly 50 countries now, and we've done all the big monuments. We've been through Italy, and we've been through, all of these places where you see these massive, big historical things. Any or all of them would be an incredible experience, honestly.
Yeah. I think it would be cool to go back to like the creation of something like the Great Wall and just watch it in a time lapse. Just sit there
Oh,
in a bubble, watch it being built in a time lapse or something.
oh, the Great Wall was incredible. That was a surreal moment. Like you see the pictures, but to actually stand on there and go, oh my God, like we're actually here. This is our life. Like this is what we do. Incredible.
Yeah. Well, then, how did the decision to World School come about for you and your family? Was it gradual, a defining moment? What was it?
It was so I read the 4 Hour Work Week and I learned the phrase location independence. And to backtrack a moment, I read the first chapter, and in the book, he says, if money was no object, what would you do for the rest of your life? And honestly, I didn't know. I was so out of touch with what I enjoyed. I was so busy with my business and life and all of those sorts of things that I didn't know the answer to those questions. And so all I wrote down was travel and help other people. And at that point, there was no mention of location independence, but I went on to continue reading, and all of these things sort of fell into place. But as I said, this is so far outside of our norm. Like when I first mentioned it to my husband, he said, but we're not hippies. We were brought up in this very traditional lifestyle. So for me, I'm very impulsive. Like, if I say, hey, you know what, I feel like going to London next week. Well, I float it with the family. And if we can, we just go. So in this instance, that was kind of what happened. It was like, oh my goodness, like we could live anywhere and work online. Hey, we should sell everything and just travel the world. And of course, my husband's first question was, well, how do we educate the kids? I'm like, well, I don't know, but I'll figure it out. So it was a very impulsive. It wasn't an idea that sat with us for a long time. It was very impulsive, which is, as I said, much to my nature. But then it took a good year of planning because we had our business, we had a house, that was kind of 3/4 built. So we had to finish that off and sell it and all of that. So the decision to do it was quite quick. I'm lucky that I've got a husband that just trusts me and my crazy ideas when they come up. But yeah, there was a bit of, there was a planning stage involved. We didn't have online income at that stage. We had a cake decorating business, and obviously you can't pack that up and take it on the road with you very easily. So, we had to plan accordingly. And yeah, so I think all up from the time we first first thought about it, it was about 13, 14 months before we hit the road.
Wow. So, yeah. But it was just like a spur of the moment decision, but then a lot of planning after the fact to actually go.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because there's when you're in that lifestyle, you're sort of stuck in so many ways. We had a house, we can't just pack up. We had a huge mortgage on the house and kids in school. And of course, there's a lot of questions that come up when you say, hey, look, let's break the mold. Let's not do what everybody else does. And at that stage, I remember at one point I sat in my car. We'd already made all the decisions. We'd sold the house. I think we were maybe a month of leaving. And I remember sitting in my car, bawling my eyes out because I was terrified that we were doing the wrong thing. Now, that was probably 10%, but, that 10% of me sort of, surfaced on that particular day. But at that stage, I wasn't aware of a lot of people doing this. And eventually, we found our community, we found Facebook groups, and now there's thousands and thousands of people out there doing this. And so I think today there's a lot more support around this. But at that time, we felt a little bit isolated. And of course, as a parent, you want to do the right thing by your kids. So taking them out of school and trusting that they would learn without teachers, that was, that was a big thing for us, because as I said, we're traditionally educated. We didn't take them out of school because we had any concerns with the school system. We just wanted more out of life than what we had at the time.
How long did it take for that hesitation, that um, isolation feeling really to go away for y'all?
You know what? I was absolutely shocked when we started traveling. I was really kind of, I had this lingering fear. First of all, that I was going to be stuck with my family for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Like I was a motivated, career orientated type person, and I was never sort of I didn't grow up longing to have kids or anything. I knew I would have kids, but I was very career orientated. And so suddenly being the idea of all being stuck together for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week was scary. And I also feared that we'd be out there by ourselves, that we were leaving our friends and our family and everything that we knew and loved. But that fear could not have been any further from the reality. We got so busy socializing with other families that were traveling. We would have moments where we'd say, you know what, can we just go to a country or go to a place where there's no one else? Don't tell anybody we're there. Let's just have some time where it's just us, because we were exhausted from socializing. We made so many friends, and I wouldn't describe myself, like growing up, I felt like I struggled to make friends. I've made so many friends on the road. Like there's this instant connection you have with other traveling families, because you all love this similar thing. And so when you connect with these people, it's an instant connection. And some of my very, very best friends in the world are world schoolers. And I love that we can now jump from country to country and catch up with all of these people as we travel. So yeah, it didn't take long. We went straight to Southeast Asia, and I joined a couple of these smaller groups, and I said, hey, we're in Kuala Lumpur, and all of a sudden we were house sitting, and all of a sudden every weekend we had a group of world schooling families come to the pool area in the complex we were house sitting, and we had these gatherings every single weekend. We had 5, 6, 7 families and I don't know, 15 kids or something like that. So it was incredible, and that's been pretty much our experience, except for COVID, for most of our travels.
Wow, that sounds like a very interesting experience for sure. And to start it off by going to Malaysia, I mean, that's pretty cool because, I mean, first off, that's not too far from Australia, so it's not too big of a jump. But it's a big cultural jump.
Yeah,
How was it, the like experiencing these cultures?
incredible. For the most part, I guess most of the countries that we've been to are used to having tourists. So, sort of we're in countries where we don't necessarily, well, I would say 95% of the time we're in non-English speaking countries. And, we learn the basics when it comes to language, but we're not there long enough to, become fluent by any stretch of the imagination. So Google Translate has been our best friend throughout the years. But it's really interesting. We do find that when we get to a new country, we tend to go straight to a supermarket, and I've learned from other world scholars that we're not alone in that. Supermarkets are an amazing way to learn about a country and contrast what and how this country does it. It's always interesting to compare. But for the most part, it's just been really fascinating. Trying to connect with locals when you don't speak the language has been a little bit more difficult, but where we can, we just absolutely love to. We love to learn about the culture and the differences. That's been, for me, one of my favorite parts of travel has been the differences between, our life as we grew up and how other countries do it. And that can be in the smallest little things. When we first left, I didn't realize that Australian English can be so different to, American English or British English. And I just thought we all spoke the same language. But I very quickly got told that people couldn't understand us. That's been fun. It's been fascinating and fun to see day-to-day tasks. And, we all have our way of doing these things. But to go to a new country and just the simplest of little things, it's just been absolutely fascinating to see those differences.
I love to hear that you say that you also go to the grocery store first thing and notice all the differences, and it does. It helps you. Are they? Is this culture into spicy food? Are they
Mhm.
salty? What do they consider as import food? How big is the import food section? Is there a halal section, or is it all combined? All these things you notice. Yeah.
The only place where we really struggled was South Korea. We were house sitting in an area about an hour out of Seoul, and the supermarket there. I walked in and I didn't recognize anything. I couldn't understand anything. Even the fruit and veg section, I couldn't. Of course, they had lettuce and the basics, but there were fruit and veggies in there that I've never seen in my life, but not a lot that I actually recognized. So I'm in a foreign country. My husband was back in Australia. I couldn't sort of even just grab something that looked a little bit familiar. That was the one country where we really suffered from culture shock. Like we really found that harder. I don't know why, but it's beyond that though. For the most part, we all have similar things. We get a little excited when we see some Australian brands or things that we recognise in supermarkets around the world. But for the most part, we all sort of have the same tasks we do in a day. So you can buy a toothbrush everywhere. You can buy toothpaste everywhere. So yeah, it's been fun.
Let's move it along to financing the adventure because the topic of money is foremost upon a lot of our listeners' concerns. And I wanted to explore the financial realities of world schooling. So, your husband, did you all have any specific strategy for funding this full-time travel lifestyle when you left versus now?
Well, the initial plan was that I was going to launch an online business. So I've always been very entrepreneurial. So I said, it's fine. We had some savings. So I said, let's just go. We'll be fine. We sold the house. We, sold all of our belongings. So we had some money in the bank, but I didn't think we'd really need to touch that too much because I had full faith in my ability to build an online business. What I didn't factor in was once we got out there, the world's just so exciting and there's so much to see and do, and trying to make yourself work online can be a little bit difficult. So in the beginning, believe it or not, and I guess this is why we initially chose Malaysia. My husband actually commuted back to Australia to work offshore on the oil rigs where he'd been working for I think 10, 11 years. And so he commuted. He'd come and see us, and then he'd head back there, do his work offshore, and then he'd head back over to us. So in the beginning, it was great because we still had an amazing income, and for him, he didn't mind the travel because when he came and joined us, he didn't have any house maintenance. He didn't have all of those day to day things that you have to do when you get home. He didn't have to do that. So he was having a vacation every time he came and hung out with us. So that was good. That was the first 9 months of our travel. We be at that point though, the contract that he was part of finished, and a whole heap of people were made redundant. So for a while, we lived off our savings. We were very, very budget conscious. We I'd say in the first 4 years, we averaged probably. I think we tracked it quite closely in the beginning. I think we averaged about $2,500 per month, and that included everything. And we traveled a lot. We went to a lot of countries, but we primarily house sat. So we were getting free accommodation around the world, and so that saved us a fortune on our budget. And the other thing that we realized very quickly was instead of going constantly day in day out, we opted to do a day at home, a day out, a day at home, which essentially doubled our budget because we're only going out half as often. But yeah, in the beginning, the idea was to launch an online business. It didn't come into fruition all that quickly. We did a lot of bits and pieces over the first few years. It was just a matter of what do we need to do to continue this lifestyle? How much money do we need? And we really were budget. As I said, we didn't have a lot of money coming in. Trying to be consistent was I think I probably could have been a lot more consistent if I'd put a lot more time and money or time and effort into it. But again, I was balancing that with I want to see the world. So um, I think, had we had that before we left, that would have been amazing. But I don't regret the way that we did it. It's we were spending a fortune in Australia. We were spending 4,000 Australian, so about 3,000 US per month just to live a basic life, pay the mortgage, pay the car leases and, all of those things, insurance, all of those things, just to get by without going out for dinners or, going and doing things. We were spending that money. So when we started traveling, we were spending less and doing a whole lot more. So yeah, it was tough, but I wouldn't do it any other way. Wouldn't give that up for the world.
Yeah, it's awesome that you can spend less and do more outside of some of these countries. And a lot of these are the countries people want to visit on their vacations. The U.S.,
Mhm.
Australia, England. I mean, people want to come there. They want to visit, but it's not very affordable to live there long term for some folks.
Mhm.
It's easier to live outside with that kind of income. Yeah.
Definitely. And your
So,
money can just go so much further. Like at the moment, we're based in Bulgaria, and what we spend per month on our two-bedroom apartment, my son, who's now back in Australia, he spends that per week on his two-bedroom unit. So it's hard to, when I know how much we can do and how much we can see and experience, the idea of returning and spending so much more money and doing so much less really isn't all that appealing.
well, speaking of your son, I also wanted to really discuss the impact of world schooling on your children's education and development.
Mhm.
So, can you share some specific examples of how your travels shaped your children's worldview?
Absolutely. So, as I mentioned earlier, we didn't pull the kids out of school because we had any issue with the school system. We were traditionally educated, and I went to university. And like that was just the way that we did things. We wanted more out of life, so we pulled our son out, who had done he'd done 6 years of school. Our daughter had gone to kindergarten but hadn't started. So we pulled the two of them out, and what we'd heard when you first pull a child out of school, everybody was recommending deschooling, which is essentially doing nothing in terms of formal education for 1 month per year that they've been to school. And when we pulled our son out and started traveling, we'd go somewhere and say, "Oh, this is going to be amazing. We're going to learn so much about blah blah blah." And you would just watch him glaze over. To him, learning was that horrible thing that happened at that place that you have to go for, 6 or 7 hours per day. Our daughter, on the other hand, was an absolute sponge. And like she just loved everything that we did and everything that we saw. But when it came to our son, you say that L word, learn. Oh, that was a scary word because that's what happens. It's forced on you. And so that was a massive eye opener for us. As I said, we didn't have any negative opinions about school at that stage because we didn't know any differently. So we pulled him out. We started traveling, and we just didn't do any formal education for the first 6 months. And it was absolutely incredible to see his spark almost reignite, I guess you could say. He all of a sudden he was seeing these things and doing these things, and nobody was forcing anything on him. We were just doing things and asking questions. And all of a sudden you'd see him start to ask questions. And so at that 6 month mark, despite our best intentions and our guts telling us, oh no, we should be doing, formal lessons and we should be testing and doing daily sort of, hours of learning, we decided to opt for more of an unschool approach. So letting them learn through experience as opposed to forced learning. And it's been absolutely incredible, which, for us, having been formally educated, it was a big jump to say, oh, we don't need to teach them. But watching them learn and watching them enjoy learning was incredible. We did test our daughter, I think, maybe a year into our travels, um, just for our own peace of mind, like just to know that we weren't ruining them. And she was so far ahead of where, the Australian standard was. Like we'd done this sort of preliminary test when we started travel. And like for maths, for example, she was already, I think we'd already worked it out as, grade 5 or grade 6, and she was 6 years of age. So she'd done that because she loved to do it. I told her one day, I've got this really cool game I want to play with you. And we started doing addition, and then that turned into, multiplication. And she just loved it. She would sit there for days and days on end, bugging us to write out all of these math sums for her because she just thought it was the best game in the world. Here I was thinking we'd never have to do another math sheet again. And then our daughter just wanted to do them all the time. So, there's, they learn so much through experience, through just being places, seeing things, asking questions, and then looking for the answer. And that's probably the one thing that I really, truly love about our experience is that our children have learned how to learn. Our son said to us at one stage, "Oh, I'm learning Japanese." And I said, "Oh, okay. When did that start?" He said, "Oh, about 2-3 weeks ago." "Oh, okay, no worries." He just decided he wanted to do it. So he had the resources to be able to go and start doing that. So it blew my mind what they could learn through experience and through actually being out in the world and seeing these things.
That's amazing. And what ages were they when you guys left?
So my daughter was 5 and my son was 11.
So yeah, those are some prime ages. I can see why your
Mm.
daughter was a sponge at that age.
Yeah, absolutely. The one thing that I would add though, and I didn't appreciate this, that deschooling applies to adults as well. We had never heard anybody say anything about that as an adult. And, I'd done 18 years of school. And for 18 months of our travels, I really struggled. I had this horrible guilt that I should be, they should be learning. They should be like doing formal learning. And all of a sudden, and I think we were about 20 months into our travels, I just noticed one day that I just didn't have the same stress levels about this. And when I thought about it, it had been about 18 months when, things had just kind of
Huh.
clicked. And I certainly hadn't been thinking, oh, well, I'm deschooling in 18 months, it's going to be fine. But when I looked back, it was 18 months, 1 month per year of school that I needed to deschool, and nobody had told us anything about that. So that's definitely something to take into consideration too.
That's very interesting. Yeah, because I can relate with that. But going on 5 years, I still have those moments where I pop up. I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Does he need more? And then my wife points out what he's doing and some of the things that he knows, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and we still do. Like, we still have our moments. The big one for me was our daughter was due to start school the following year. And in that first year, she would have learned to read. And so as a mom, I was like, oh my God, is she still going to learn to read? Like I don't know how to teach her to read. And I was so stressed about being the teacher. And then in that first year of travel, she didn't learn to read, and she didn't learn to read in the second year. And I was getting very, very stressed by this, but she just wasn't interested. But the minute she was interested, it came so easily. She said to us one day, because, of course, if we wanted to plan something or do something, we'd spell things in front of her, and we knew she couldn't understand us. So one day she said, "You know what? I'm so sick of you spelling things in front of me. I'm going to learn to read now, read and spell." And so she did. And interestingly enough, and I think this is one of the world schooling moments that really opened my eyes up. She learned to write and to spell. A lot of that she learned from our Google Hub device, because we've had a Google Hub with us pretty much most of our travels, and wherever we are, we use it to research. So, if we go for a walk and the clouds look strange to us or something, we'll go back and she would ask Google, questions about this. And she used to love to bake. And so she would say, okay, I'm going to cook. This is, at 8 or 9, she'd say, I'm going to cook dinner tonight. And she would go and she would sit with Google and say, okay, I need a recipe for such and such. And she would ask Google to spell this out. And so she would sit there and write, and she'd have to say, Google, spell the word oven. And it'd say OVEN, and she'd say, spell it again. And so she would sit there and she would write out the entire recipe just getting Google to tell her this stuff.
Wow.
And she'd walk out with pages and pages of instructions. But it was so much fun for her. And, that's way more fun than
Yeah.
being forced to sit down and read from a book. And we had horrible troubles getting our son to learn. He just wasn't interested at all. So it was really cool to see the difference between the two.
Yeah. Interest is the greatest motivator.
Absolutely.
For children, for adults, everybody. When you're interested in it, you want to know. If you're not interested, you may have to learn it, but you might not retain it.
Absolutely. And that's the
So
key to everything we've done. I look at so many things we've done along the way. When you're there, it just makes so much more sense. I hated history at school. Absolutely hated it, because being in Australia, we were so far away from everything that had happened that it didn't feel relevant. But when you go to these places, when you go to Pearl Harbor or you go to Berlin, all of a sudden, even for myself, I was absolutely fascinated. And, it's no different for the kids.
and I know that you get a lot of questions in your Facebook group as well as personally from travelers. What would you say is the biggest question you normally get from people new to this lifestyle or thinking about jumping into it?
I would definitely say it's the money aspect. It's a big jump for most people to go from a 9 to 5 to working online. And so, there's a lot of different things that you can do. But for most people, it's, it's easy to go to work, do the job, get paid, come home, get paid. And it's, you rinse and repeat. The money just kind of appears in your bank account. When you're traveling, it's a completely different ballpark, but there's so many different things you can do. And honestly, what I've loved about it from a career perspective is that this has forced me to really sort of tune into what I love to do, and we've built a business around doing that. um, so I would recommend to people, ask that question before you head off, and look at those options, look at different things that you can do. But don't think for a second, just because you're a chef or a cake decorator or an office manager, or one of those jobs that is very much sort of location dependent. Don't think for a second that you're not going to be able to work online, because there are so many things that you can do. For a long time, we worked remote jobs. For a long time I was on the phone selling courses for a company, and I just had my hours blocked out each day that I would sit and do that. And then in the rest of the time, we'd go off and explore. So you don't like. It's very, very, very popular with people to start a business, but there's so many different ways that you can do it.
Okay. And what would you say are some of your favorite world schooling adventures, the experiences that pop into your brain when people talk about this lifestyle?
There's just been so many. I think it's those moments that you're going somewhere and you realize that this is life. That was one of the big things for us, that I had to realize this is not a vacation, this is life. And so, we don't always do a lot of touristy stuff. We live our lives wherever we are. And when you suddenly realize you're doing the grocery shopping and you're in, Barcelona, for example, and you're looking around and you're seeing all the differences, and that moment of realizing that you've got the freedom to do these things and to appreciate that this has become normal life. But even just, to see all
Yeah.
those things that you've seen in the media, that you've seen on TV, like I mentioned earlier, walking the Great Wall of China. For us, when we first started traveling, we went really hard. We averaged 10 days per location for the first 18 months of our travel. I don't recommend it. It's very exhausting. But just for us, the second month of our travel was going to Paris and touching the Eiffel Tower, and going to London and seeing Big Ben, and all of these sorts of things. Those things are kind of the preliminary things that you've seen and heard of all these things, and you get to go and experience them and pinch yourself that you're actually there. But then it's the day-to-day stuff, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. It's the connections that we've had with other world schooling family. It's, watching other families' kids grow up when you meet them, in 8 or 9 different countries over the years, and things like that. It's living a different lifestyle and having the freedom to to do what you want, what works for your family. And it's scary in the beginning, but oh my goodness, like when you have that freedom, it's just incredible.
Yes, definitely. It's so incredible to have that freedom. Now, unfortunately, I know that you were traveling while I was traveling during COVID, and we had to settle
Mhm.
down for a little bit. Were there anything that you learned during that period that helped shape your travels now going forward?
That I never want to be stuck in Panama during a lockdown again. We were in a very, very strict lockdown in Panama. Um, what I appreciated was, and I think when I mentioned earlier about being scared in the beginning of all being together 24/7. What I realized during the pandemic is just how much I valued that. Like, you find your space, but the relationships that we'd created, what I didn't realize that was we'd spent, 4 or 5 years preparing for COVID, because when we went into lockdown, not a lot changed. Sure, we couldn't leave the house, but we were used to being around each other 24/7. I love the relationships that we've created as a family. Um, I think the big one would probably be the community aspect. I think, we've always factored in being in places where other world schooling families are. But I think that really came into play after being sort of locked in our house for so long. That community aspect is invaluable. Like, to be able to hang out with other world schooling parents and see the kids, go off and have their freedom and live their lives. It doesn't have to be in one location as we were in Australia. My daughter's right now at the skate park with two good friends that she's made here in Cyprus. You can live those things that you want your kids to have. It doesn't have to disappear because you're not in the one location. So I would say COVID really showed us how important that community is, but also showed us that anything's possible. Our daughter did 6 months of gymnastics lessons via Zoom. It really made us what we had, and made us appreciate even more that anything was possible, and we had to decide what we wanted to do with it.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned community. There's so many really good communities out there. I mean, we're
Yeah.
hosting a pop-up hub with Worldschool Pop-up Hub in June
Oh,
down in Oaxaca, Mexico,
yeah.
Oaxaca. So it's going to be cool. And those things that I like to find everywhere we go as well, because it does it. You can meet new people, you see some of the same people, your kids have the
Mhm.
same relationships, they get to find people all the time. It's really great. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's awesome. Now, you've been living this lifestyle long enough that I'm sure you can attest to its effect on your children as your oldest has now grown to be an adult. Now, um, it's great to have you on on that part alone. Do you talk to parents out there about how he is? Who is he? Is he well adjusted? Is he having trouble getting into school, work, any of that stuff? Do you have a good story or something you can tell us about that?
Absolutely. And of course, as a parent, that is one of the fears. And that's probably the second most popular question we hear is, well, how are they going to get into university? And of course, I lived with that. I trusted all the people that had been ahead of me, that had walked that path. And I've got a really good friend who she has been the dean of the university. She's world schooled all of her kids. She's got 5 kids. And some have gone to university, some are just excelling in whatever area they love. So there's definitely avenues for that. It's been really interesting to watch Brody return to Australia and watch that play out, because that was a fear that I know I had for quite some time. What I loved was when he returned to Australia, he went and started applying for jobs. He just wanted a normal 17-year-old life. So he went back, lived with my parents for a year, and started applying for jobs, as you do when you're 17, McDonald's or KFC or any of these. He interviewed for 5 jobs, and he said every single interview, all they wanted to know was about his world schooling experience. He said, what he expected of a traditional interview went out the window, and all they did was sit there for half an hour and just talk about everything that he'd done. And he got offered all of the jobs. Like they just absolutely loved him, and they loved that experience that he's got. And I think that's one of the things that you see with world schooling kids is there's no barrier. Like the conversations I've had with 7-year-olds and 12-year-olds, and there's no difference. Like our kids and the world schooling kids I see, they're communicating with people of all ages. So for him to sit there and just have a conversation, the experience that he's had and his communication skills and all of that, it makes him stand out from other people that have been through the school education and don't have those life skills. In terms of the piece of paper to get into university, obviously that's a little trickier because he doesn't have that. We didn't do a formal program or anything like that, but that certainly doesn't need to stop him. If he wanted to go to university, there are in Australia we have like TAFE courses or exams that he can take. That once he's done those, they become a pathway into university. So it's a different way of getting into university as opposed to what you might do through the traditional sort of school system. But it certainly doesn't need to stop him. And if anything, it's just going to enhance his application when it comes to university or to TAFE or whatever the case may be, because he's got that life experience. And I hear time and time again from people that universities are looking for people that have that sort of experience. And so many times I've heard people say that that life experience is really what's putting them ahead of other applicants. So yeah, it's a different way of doing it, but there's certainly no reason for it to hold him back.
Very good. Yeah, I'm sure that helps a lot of parents out there that are listening. And they're like, wow, okay, so he's moved on. He's doing well. That's awesome. So how often do you get to see him now that he's moved out?
Well, he actually works for me now, so we do Zoom calls a couple of times a week. But in terms of in person, we've sort of come and gone. So at least once a year. The deal is at the moment that he will come and visit us once a year, and we'll go and visit him once a year. So it's a
Oh,
long way. Like it's hard because Australia is a long way away anyway. But on one hand, I'm so proud of the fact that he's off living his life and enjoying that. Um, but ironically, I think when he left the travel lifestyle that we had, he just wanted to be in one place. He wanted a job. He wanted to go to work and be with his friends. And he said, "I'm never working online. I'm like I don't like that lifestyle." And I felt like I'd ruined his passion for travel. And then I think it was about 18 months later, he started doing some work for me. And he's like, "Mom, this is amazing. I can work wherever I like and whenever I like. And it's incredible." And I said, "Yes, hello." So I'm hoping that continues. But he's now got a girlfriend who has never traveled. So it's chalk and cheese when it comes to their travel lifestyle. She's never had a passport, but she's excited to travel, and he's excited to show her the world. So my family are actually all chipping in and buying her a passport for her birthday, I think it is, so that she can come and ski with us at the end of this year.
wow, that's so cool. That is very cool. Yeah, and it's interesting to hear because even my son, he's like, that he doesn't think he's going to work online or he's not going to travel.
Mm.
He's going to settle down when he's older.
Yeah.
And like I hear your kid's story, he's settled down for a bit. He's seen what it's like to be sedentary, and now he wants to get back out there a little bit more.
Yeah. All I hear
That's
from my
interesting.
daughter is, "Oh, when I'm 17 or 18 and I move back to Australia." Like, honestly, we hear that all the time. She loves the travel, and she keeps saying to me, "Oh, no, I'm going to keep traveling as an adult. I'm going to have a base in Australia so I can be, but near Nan and Pop and near Brody." Obviously, for as a world schooling family, our kids were incredibly close. They still are, but obviously, location wise, we were all together. And so it's been hard for her, particularly for him to be back in Australia and for her to be so far away. So she's looking forward to moving back there. But I think she's far more entrepreneurial. So I can see her, using Australia, as expensive as it is, as a base and continuing to travel. Um, But yeah, they've got to experience it for themselves. And I think if he loves to be in one location and have a job, I'm just encouraging them to choose a career or choose a job that can be location independent. Because even if he wants to be in one location, he has the freedom to choose. If he wants to be in Australia and then just wants to go on holiday for a month, he can take his laptop, he can work as needed, and then he can return.
Yeah.
So it's more about the freedom that he would have from location independence as opposed to having to travel full time.
You're a great mom. There's a lot of moms out there, parents out there, period, that they don't even want their kid to go out of state for college. Yours is like a continent and a half away.
Yeah, I know. Well, interestingly, his girlfriend. So we're planning our Facebook group, Worldschooling Central. We do trips with families, and we're in the midst of planning our next Egypt trip. So we would take like 10 families and create a traveling community. And so I've said to my son and his girlfriend, well, you can come and run like a kids club and create a program and do all of this sort of stuff. And sitting around the table at home in Australia, her family were with us that night for a barbecue, and we're talking about it. And in my world, there is nothing that stops you from just getting on a plane and traveling. And it was a real eye opener because we talked about the fact that she would come and travel to Egypt and do all of this. And her mum's first question was, well, are you going to have enough leave built up for your work? Like you have to check if your boss is okay with that. And I'd forgotten that life was like that because we'd been on the road at this stage like 8 years or something. And so it was a real eye opener to look at that. That's what we always lived. But now we have the freedom where, as long as I've got my laptop, it doesn't matter where we are. So like if we want to go somewhere next week or somewhere next month, we just go and the business comes with us. So interesting to compare the two.
So cool. That is so cool. That is so cool. Well, do you have any like challenges that you guys have faced while you're on the road, or any obstacles that you'd like to talk about?
Think for the most part, like I said, the money was challenging. Um, there were times where we really, really were scraping by, especially COVID, but then that's not the norm. But I would say that we were scraping by in Australia as well. We were doing all the right things, but the cost of living was so much higher that I remember thinking at one point, I'd much rather be scraping by traveling the world full time than scraping by living in Australia. So that was certainly challenging. And I think, it is hard. It's hard when you are so far away. And especially for us, like if our family were in Europe, then we could, pop home far more easily. But when your family is so far away, you have those moments where things happen and, Christmases and Easters and birthdays and all of those sorts of things. But with technology today, there's ways around that. We had Easter dinner for my family in Australia recently, and we did an Easter breakfast. So we do a Zoom call and we set the computer up and we all just sit there and have our meal together. So there are ways that you can work around those things. I think you just have to be adaptable. You just have to appreciate what you've got and why you want it. And, when things are important, my dad had open heart surgery early last year and we happened to be back in the country at that time. But had we not been, we would have gone home for it. Like these are the things that happen and you've got to be there. But you do have to appreciate that there's so much that comes from this lifestyle. It is, at times it is a compromise, but the good, obviously, for us, because we continue doing it, the good far outweighs the bad. And we just, we adapt. So, but I think they're the main struggles that we've had. I guess the only other thing that I would say is that the world is not quite ready for people that don't fit the norm. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, but the world's not quite ready. So, so many times you check into a hotel and they ask you for your address and you're like, well, here, because this is where I'm living at the moment. Or I'm trying to think so many other things where, we're not in Australia. And so we can't do the things that we ordinarily would. We've got residency in Panama. We're in the process of getting residency in Bulgaria. And We have a company in the US and the UK and shortly Bulgaria, and we just don't fit the mold of what society normally expects. But the beautiful thing about that is there are ways around it, and there are thousands upon thousands of people that have traveled this path um, already. And so, there's groups like Worldschooling Central that you can get in and you can ask those questions. So nobody needs to feel alone when it comes to this lifestyle anymore, because there is just a wealth of information out there. And I mean, the whole reason I launched Worldschooling Central was because I wish I'd learnt about this 10 years earlier. I wish somebody had told me that this was a possibility. And so we launched that just to help one family. I said, like, if I could help one family learn about this lifestyle and help change their life, then that will be well worth it. And I've got one family, the mum now works for me, and she first heard about world schooling through the work that we'd been doing. And we'd connected on Facebook, and she'd been friends with me on Facebook for years. And we finally met in Turkey the year before last. And she said it was like meeting a rock star to her. She's like, oh my goodness, I'm meeting Kelly King. But for me, I was just so excited that, they're now traveling. They've been traveling, I think, for 3 years, and they've completely changed their life and are loving what they're doing now because of that. So, and there's not just myself, obviously, there's lots of people out there that are living this, and we all love helping and encouraging other people to be able to achieve the same thing. So
That's amazing. Yeah, that's a really good summation of everything as well. I love what you're doing there with Worldschooling Central, and I want to talk about that for in a minute. But before we do, I want to have a little fun with some travel trivia so we can wrap up with your Worldschooling Central at the. So let's start it out. Hopefully easy. What is what is the largest city in Australia?
Sydney.
Yes.
That would be really embarrassing if I got that wrong. Oh, my travel knowledge is. Oh, I'm nervous now.
And you're applying for citizenship in Bulgaria. So, what is the capital city of Bulgaria?
Sofia.
Okay. I know that you visited Malaysia. So, can you tell
Yeah.
me what iconic twin towers are a landmark in Kuala Lumpur?
The Petronas Towers.
What famous canal connects the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean?
The Panama Canal.
The Panama
Right.
Canal, yes.
We drove over it so many times. Look, the Panama Canal.
Yeah, that first time was fun.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And what is the national animal of Australia?
The emu and the kangaroo.
Ah, yes, very good. I can't wait to see
You know
an
what?
emu in
If you
person
asked
when
my
we get there.
daughter that, though, I do wonder if she'd be able to answer it, because she spent more time out of Australia than she has in. And somebody asked her the other day, what's the capital of Australia? And she's like, I don't know. So, oh my God. Bad parents, bad Australians.
Well, the big question is, all right, you left when she was 5. Does she have an Australian accent?
No, she has an American accent.
Oh my.
Yeah, she says she like Australian English and American English is very, very different. And what we didn't realize, we grew up watching, Friends and American TV, and in our eyes, it's the same thing. And when we first traveled to the US, I remember we got to the airport, and our son, we came out, we were at LAX, and somebody started talking to my son, and he looked at me and he's like, what's he saying, Mum? And he had a very, very strong, I think it was Boston accent, and I had to translate for him. So, yeah, so there's a lot of words that we use that are very, very different to American English. And so my daughter has grown up watching a lot of this sort of stuff, and she's got a lot of American friends. So she uses a lot of words that we don't use. And so when we go back to Australia, everybody has a little bit of a giggle at her accent, but she loves it.
I, I, I can understand. Like I'm told normally that I don't really have much of an accent, but if you get me down south, with some of my relatives, the southern accent comes out, and
Uh-huh.
yeah,
I got told, and I've been told quite regularly, or people have picked me for being British. And it's worried me a little bit from time to time because I'm like, oh man, am I losing my Australian accent? But, when I get chatting, obviously not. But a couple of times, even just 2 days ago, someone said, oh, what's it like living in Britain? And I'm like, I don't. I'm from Australia. So, what do you do?
Well, I wanted to wrap things up with your future, world schooling future, to be exact. Do
Mhm.
you envision world schooling indefinitely, or is there a time frame for returning to a more settled lifestyle?
I have no desire to, well, I have no desire to return to what was, the normal sort of traditional life. We have definitely slowed down. As I mentioned earlier, at the start, we averaged 10 days per location. And we see a lot of world schoolers do that in the beginning. And, it's exciting to be out there. But typically we also see a lot of people burn out quite quickly. And we did our second month, we averaged 2.5 days per location. So we were all in. Um, so we travel way more slowly now. We've set up for since 2019, actually, we've had a base. So we had Panama for a few years. That was a little longer than expected because we got locked in there for a couple of years. Then we went to Turkey and had a base in Turkey for a couple of years. And now we're setting ourselves up in Bulgaria. So we're using a base and then exploring, the area around that. So we spend about 6 months at our home, and then we travel for the remainder of that. We've picked up a dog along the way, so we have kind of the best of both worlds. When I'm in Bulgaria in our apartment, any more than a month, and I start getting itchy feet. And then when we're traveling, if we're going too fast, I'm just exhausted all the time. So the big realization is that this is not a vacation. We don't have to do everything today. We don't go to places anymore that are, we stay there for 5 days and then go to the next one and go to the next one. Like it's not sustainable long term. So we travel a lot more slowly, but no, I mean, we're still talking. We plan on being in Europe for the next 2 to 3 years, and then plan on going to Latin America for a few years. And by then the kids will both be probably gone, I don't know, back in Australia or something. And so then my husband and I will just continue doing whatever we want to do. But we love the freedom that we have, and it can be whatever makes sense for you. Like if you want to go and live in Europe, then find a base. We love Bulgaria because it's cheap. It's our apartment we're moving into a new one next month. It's 400 euros per month to have this apartment, so we can have that long term, and then we can go and explore other parts of the world and come back. And so it's a really nice balance. But no, I've got no desire to stop. I think I would just be really bored if I stopped.
I feel that way too. I really do. Uh, and like a little bit ago, you mentioned the mission of World Schooling Central. So,
Mhm.
what are your hopes for the future of it, for that platform?
So again, the whole goal was always just to introduce world schooling to people and be able to create that community. We had to put the whole thing on pause for a few years over COVID. Um, but our big focus now, we've just launched a newsletter designed to educate. And I've always been, this is my passion project. I have a business that is, generating the income that we use to travel. World Schooling Central is very much a passion project. So a lot of what we do is, community led and really free to users. We then also run trips for families. So, a couple of times a year, we're just about to start ramping these back up again. We'll do trips to different parts of the world, and essentially, we're bringing a community, like a little traveling community, together and traveling through a country. So we've done a couple of trips to Egypt at this point, and I absolutely love those trips because it's that community that I've mentioned so many times on this call, and just being able to hang out with other travel enthusiasts, other world schoolers, and watch the kids create their community. It doesn't matter. Our son, when he was with us, he was 16, and the youngest person on the trip I think was 2, and everything in between. And you just see these kids just traveling as a community. It's just It's absolutely incredible. And what I love about those is we get a lot of new world schooling families come on those trips. And so they essentially get, 2 weeks access to my husband and I, to other world schooling families as well. And they can learn, ask all the questions that they want. And time again, we see people go home and pack up and maybe not sell everything. Some have sold everything and started traveling the world, but it's been a really lovely sort of launching point for a lot of people that are, new and sort of dipping their toes into the water. And so I really love those trips. Plus, we see people come back again and again. So I've got people from past trips now saying, well, when are we doing another trip? Because it's time for a reunion. Our last Egypt trip, I think we had 5 or 6 of the families had been to our Indonesia trip in 2019. So it's always going to be about helping people learn about world schooling, have a place where they can ask the questions. Because, like I said earlier, I didn't feel like I really had that when I first started traveling. And so, we post daily content in there just designed to spark conversations. And it's really fascinating to see the answers that you get from people, and really just educate. And then if people want to come and hang out with us on these trips that we do.
That's really cool. Yeah. I hope maybe we can come to one of those trips one of these days. We're going to be over in that area really
Yeah.
soon. So that's really cool.
Egypt is an amazing place to go with a group trip. Our traveling communities are typically 40, which I know sounds like a lot. And in the beginning, and I always ask this question of our guests, how did you feel in the beginning that there was going to be 40 people? And they said, oh, I thought it was going to be a bit too much. And then I asked them how, at the end of the trip, how they feel. And every single person has told me, I cannot imagine even one of those people not being there, because like it's a full on community traveling around the
Yeah.
place.
Is that 40 counting the kids?
Yeah. Yeah. So typically it's about 50-50 adults versus kids. So kids being 12 or under. And what we see is, especially with Egypt, it's a place that is so different in so many different ways, but it's a place that you absolutely have to go to once in your life. The beauty of having the traveling community is that you're a little bit insulated. Egypt is there's a lot of pressure from some of the in the tourist areas. There's a lot of pressure from people to buy, and you can get hassled a lot. We literally have our guides paying people to not hassle our community. And at the end of the trip, everybody is always fascinated, because you still get hassled, but they're always fascinated to hear at the end of the trip, well, we paid them not to hassle you, and you still felt hassled. So imagine what that would have been like if we hadn't been doing that. So everybody has always said, glad we came to Egypt, once in a lifetime opportunity, glad we came as a group, never need to come back, because it's like it's pretty
Yeah.
it's really full on, but it's an amazing place to go. So I really love our trips because of that.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, and I can attest, 40 is not too much. When we had our pop-up in Buenos Aires a few months ago, we had 40 people there, counting kids and adults. And I got to know every single person. I got to know all the kids. We were only there for a week, but
Mhm.
it was still awesome. It was actually the best time I had in Buenos Aires. I didn't love Buenos Aires, but I loved it with the people,
Yeah,
which was
absolutely.
cool.
And the community aspect will always be the highlight for me of everything that we've done as world schoolers, because the connections you make are so much quicker, so much easier, and they just last, for so long, especially when you then go and meet everybody again in different parts of the world. That's really cool.
Yes, definitely. Well, it was great having you on today. Is there any parting words or anything you finally like? How can people get in touch with you, get on your newsletter, any of these things?
Absolutely. So if you on Facebook, look for World Schooling Central, you'll find our community on there. We've got a website, worldschoolingcentral.com. Really, our main focus is in the Facebook group. But we'd love to have people come and join the community. And as you come into the community, we've got an amazing guide that we give away to people for free And as part of that, you can join the newsletter and get weekly content from my son, who's back in Australia running it for me. And yeah, again, that's all just designed to help people do more and see more. And in terms of, I guess, parting advice, I would just say, just do it. Like, honestly, give yourself a year. Go and have this experience with your kids. They will grow up way faster than you could ever possibly imagine. And the one thing that someone said to me that just stuck with me is you can always go back to your normal life. Even if you sold everything today, quit your job, traveled for a year, you can come back, you can find another house, you can find another couch and another bed, you can get another job. But that year that you've spent with your kids, you'll never get that time back, but you will treasure that time forever. So I can't recommend it enough. Just get out there, see the world, create those memories, and enjoy every moment of it.
I love it. Yeah, memories are integral. They're what we're going to sustain us as we get older. When your muscles give out, your back gives out, and you can't walk as well. You
Yeah,
can't go travel anymore, but you'll have those memories. So,
yeah, absolutely.
all right. Well, again, thank you, Karen. It was great having you on today.
Thank you.
We just wanna see someone like you. We just wanna travel the